Hi, this is Kevin Dunn, the Get Fit Guy. Now, this past week, I received an email from a listener whose son is a wrestler, and he just qualified for the Greco-Roman Wrestling Nationals. She was asking me about more healthy ways to cut weight. So first of all, I want to say congratulations to your son. What an amazing achievement in any sport to qualify for nationals, and I wish your son every success. So, what is weight cutting? Well, it's a practice predominantly used in combat sports like boxing, mixed martial arts, wrestling, and judo. It involves athletes losing weight rapidly before a competition in order to qualify for a lower weight class, which theoretically gives them a size and strength advantage over a lighter opponent. The practice itself is controversial and does carry significant health risks, yet it remains prevalent due to the perceived competitive benefits. I have a personal story about weight cutting I'll tell you, which is that in 2012, I was fortunate enough to win the Hong Kong Full Contact Karate Tournament. I say fortunately because I was absolutely exhausted, and the reason I was rapid weight loss. So I showed up at this tournament intending to compete in the under 90 kilogram weight class, and I showed up at 89.5 kilos. And it was what we call a same-day weigh-in. So in some sports like boxing, you'll see weigh-ins happening the day before, which gives you a chance to really cut weight because you know you've got like a whole day to replenish nutrients and rehydrate yourself. Some sports, to discourage this weight loss, are same-day weigh-in. So I showed up expecting to compete under 90 kilo, and then in one of those kind of weird, sometimes situations we find in sports where organizers are trying to manipulate outcomes, they had decided that morning that the weight classes were shifting by 5 kilos. So I was now going to be in an open heavyweight class with fighters that were over, 65 pounds, heavier than myself. So because I didn't really fancy fighting someone that weighed that much more than me, I found out what time it was likely my first fight was going to be, and then I went to the local gym and went in the sauna. In fact, I went in the sauna and skipped whilst wearing a hoodie. Successfully lost the required amount of water weight, weighed in, and then tried to drink it all back on. It was a complete disaster, and I was very, very lucky to have been able to be competitive in spite of the massive amount of dehydration. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. So why do fighters do this? So first of all, it gives a competitive advantage. So the primary reason for cutting weight would be to compete in a weight class where you believe you have a physical advantage over potential opponents. By cutting weight, athletes can potentially be heavier and stronger than their opponents, because once they rehydrate, they'll regain the weight after the weigh-in. Now, I typically weigh about 94, 95 kilograms. This coming year, I want to compete in the British University's Judo League, so I'll need to be under 90. So if I can cut my weight to 89 kilos and then rehydrate, because that weight class is 80 to 89, I might end up outweighing opponent by 14 kilos or about 30 pounds. And in sports where you're hitting people or throwing them, this makes a huge difference. Next thing is weight class regulations. Combat sports are divided into weight classes in order to ensure fair competition. Athletes might cut weight to meet the requirements of a weight class that they feel they're just more competitive in. This is especially important if an athlete was at the upper limit of one weight class. They could kind of drop down to a lower one if it was feasible. Now, it does exist in other sports too. So my dad was a power lifter, and he actually moved up a whole weight class because there were less competitive athletes in the weight class above. It's just really sporting manipulation. And thirdly, it's kind of tactical because it gives you a psychological edge. Because if you successfully make weight and then you rehydrate effectively, you'll feel more confident going into a fight because you will know that you have a potential size and strength advantage. So what about some ways that people would choose to cut weight? So as I already covered, dehydration is probably the most common way. Athletes will reduce water intake and then use saunas, hot baths, and exercise, sometimes wearing a sauna suit, which is kind of like you wear over your tracksuit. It's kind of plasticky and it really makes you sweat a lot. You'll sweat all that water weight out. Some athletes may also use dangerous diuretics to increase urine output. There's also some kind of dietary manipulation you could do. Athletes will significantly reduce caloric intake and avoid certain foods, usually focusing on lower carbohydrate and low fat to minimize water retention. And thirdly, they may use manipulation of what we call glycogen stores. So that's a fuel which is stored in the muscles, and that can also lead to a lot of water loss because glycogen binds to water in your body. So if you reduce carbohydrate intake, you'll reduce glycogen stores and therefore water. And again, I said I've seen people using diuretics, but I've also seen or heard of use of laxatives in order to increase the frequency of bowel movements. And again, this can help to lose weight. So those things, as you can imagine, aren't entirely without its toll on the body. So there are a lot of dangers to rapid weight cutting. Predominantly, we find electrolyte imbalances occurring. So severe dehydration is where we get a dangerous imbalance of electrolytes, so like sodium, potassium, calcium. This imbalance can cause cramping in probably the lowest end of the bad things that can go wrong. But you can also have heart palpitations and, in extreme cases, cardiac arrest. Dehydration also reduces the overall volume of your blood, which impairs your cardiovascular function and your ability to sweat and lose heat, or what we call thermoregulation, during sporting performance. As you can imagine, prolonged dehydration can also lead to problems with your kidneys. It can lead to acute kidney damage or long-term damage due to the stress placed on your organs, and that can happen because typically sporting events occur through a window of years of time where people compete regularly. The next one would be heat problems. So athletes cutting weight in hot environments or using saunas are at risk of getting heat-related illnesses, including heat exhaustion, heat stroke, both of which can be fatal, but definitely need to be treated promptly, even at the low end of the spectrum. Cognitive impairments, so it'll affect your ability to concentrate, your reaction time, your decision-making abilities, and all of these things are crucial in all sports, especially combat sports. If you think about when you go out, you might go for a hike and it's a really hot day. The hotter you get, the more sluggish you feel, and the more you feel like you're kind of in between the world you're in and the real world. It doesn't quite seem like you're all there. Finally, we got muscle loss. So rapid weight loss often results in muscle catabolism, which is a loss of muscle mass, which can reduce your strength and endurance. This negates any advantage that you have at competing at a lower weight class because you won't perform optimally if you're losing muscle. Mental health problems because of the stress and physical strain of weight cutting can cause anxiety, depression, and also makes sense to correlate that with eating disorders. I know some athletes that did suffer from eating disorders, and it took a lot of time and interventions with therapy to help them to get over that, even when they stopped being competitive athletes. It's a lot of pressure to maintain a certain weight, and that can certainly lead to you developing an unhealthy relationship with certain types of food and your own body image as well. I see a lot of people making fun recently of a fighter called Paddy Pimblett in the UFC. Paddy the Baddie, but there's a lot of people calling him Paddy the Fatty because in between fights, his weight balloons up. This can be bad for him because he has a lot of weight to lose. But imagine the impact it is on your mental health when you've got people making fun of you. There was Ricky Hatton, who was a world champion boxer as well when I was growing up, and they used to call him Ricky Fatten because of the same reason. They're used to seeing these fighters really kind of very low body fat when they compete, and then outside of that cutting phase, their weight may look to have ballooned up, but it's really just gone back up to where it would be for just a normal member of the general population. And finally, we can find a lot of problems that come with rebound weight gain. As after weigh-ins, athletes will then rapidly consume large amounts of food and rehydration. And this rapid fluctuation, from a situation where 1 minute you've been taking laxatives and diuretics, and the next minute you're hammering down KFC buckets, it causes gastrointestinal problems. And these issues can become chronic. You may not ever restore, your fully optimal physical condition. Weight cutting has caused several high-profile incidents, which have highlighted how dangerous they are. Probably most famously, in 2013, an MMA fighter called Leandro Souza died from a stroke, which was caused by extreme dehydration attempting to make weight for a fight. There have been similar incidents with athletes in wrestling experiencing health complications from rapid weight loss. So what can we do to mitigate the dangers with weight cutting? Because, it's going to happen. So a few recommendations have been proposed, which is that athletes should aim to gradually lose weight over time. That's something I'm looking at myself. So I know that I'm about 94 kilos at the moment, and I know that probably October, November time, I may be wanting to do, as I said, a British University Judo League competition, and that would mean I'd need to lose 5 kilograms. But that still puts me right now at probably about 4 or 5 months away. So I'm only looking at losing about a quarter to half a pound of body weight a week, which is something that can be done sustainably and a lot more healthily. So gradual weight loss through a combination of moderate calorie restriction and exercise, and that'll avoid you having to go through extreme measures, a couple of days before. The next thing would be just like really monitoring your hydration status. It can prevent dehydration like that. And those can be done through like urine testing or even what we call bioimpedance. So if you've ever heard of like an in-body machine, or if you've used one of those machines at the gym to check your body weight, where you have to hold electrodes, and that works by sending a current through your body, that'll let you know how hydrated you are, because these work by sending currents through really what's water weight essentially. Education is really important. So coaches, trainers, medical staff, they should all be educated on this stuff. Find that a lot more old school coaches are very experienced in this kind of thing, let's say, and potentially might be more likely to recommend that. And, looking at more modern coaches that have come from a sporting science background, they may be more up on that kind of thing, although that's obviously a major generalization on my part to say that, but it's what I have personally experienced. And rule changes. Some sporting organizations, such as the UFC, have introduced early weigh-ins, and those allow a lot more time for rehydration and recovery before a fight. I think I'd said earlier on, sometimes there's same-day weigh-ins, and same-day weigh-ins can also discourage this kind of thing because you know that you're never going to gain it back in an hour. So rule changing and thinking about the amount of time that you've got to recover and rehydrate can certainly help. And adjusting weight classes could be important too. Like maybe just add more weight classes so that people don't have a competitive advantage. I think it's crazy that the weight classes here in judo are in 10 kilogram implements, which is like 22 pounds or something like that. There's a huge difference between someone weighing 22 pounds more and 22 pounds less. So if we added weight categories every 5 or 10 pounds, then we might not have enough competitors for each weight class, but we'd certainly see people probably stopping doing this kind of thing. So, weight cutting is just a really pervasive practice in combat sports, and it's obviously driven by the desire for competitive advantage. However, there are a huge amount of risks associated with it. Significant ones, as I've already noted, are dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, kidney damage, heat illnesses, cognitive impairments, muscle loss, mental health problems. So to protect athletes, it's really important to promote safer weight management practices through education, monitoring people's average weights maybe across the year, and also just regulatory changes. Whilst the competitive edge gained by cutting weight is really substantial, the potential dangers do underscore the need for an approach that prioritizes athlete safety. If you have any questions or want to say hi to me, please email me on getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Quick and Dirty Tips is a podcast, as you know. Thanks to the team at Quick and Dirty Tips, Morgan Christensen, Holly Hutchins, Brandon Getchis, Davina Tomlin, and me, Kevin. If you have a question, you can also voicemail me at 510-353-3104 or send me an email at getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Check out the show notes in the podcast app. Thank you.